finally did it. We caught the massive beaver that's been plaguing the log cabin and the off-grid property and destroying all of our trees. Stick around because we're going to be cooking this delicious beaver primitively. I'm a little bit wet and a little bit cold. Oh, incidentally, if you guys are looking for some boots, high sea boots. They're waterproof, just not when it goes over top of the boot. Well, one last check of this these traps here, and I'm gonna pull them. It's getting on in the season. It's getting a little warm. As you guys know, I've been trying to trap a beaver for a couple of weeks now. I got well, I got part of the beaver, got it by the hand, and then I managed to escape. So that, I think, really educated the beavers, but because it's getting so warm out, the meat's not going to be good anymore. And I like to trap for two reasons, not just the fur, but also the food. As you guys know, been running traps all week here at the off-grid, and we set up a variety of different traps, coney bear traps, and then I relocated them a couple times just to find the right spot for them. And I got close a couple of times, but this beaver is getting pretty smart, and like I say, it's getting on in the season, it's getting warm. The beavers are going to lose their prime fur, and it's going to be harder to keep that meat fresh, especially overnight if I do end up catching a beaver. So probably the last few days here to check. Head over to the pond, and I checked the fish. They're all looking pretty good. Loose Lois is back. She wasn't feeling too well for a bit. She was kind of resting quite a bit more than I was comfortable with on the shores. And she came around today. I went to visit down, and she's swimming around healthily. I didn't find Clark Spence. Clark Spence was doing good a couple of days ago, but I didn't see him this morning. The feet are now in fishing mode, or feeding mode I should say. Probably fishing mode too. If I toss something in, I'm sure they would grab it, but they're eating healthily. The aerators are working really good from Condors and Nature's Pond Care. You can check out naturespondcare.com. Even the Bass Pro Shop's food plot's coming out really good. So I'm impressed by that. And the only other thing to check off the list of things to do this week is to get a beaver. Turns out it's the hardest. It was the hardest thing to do so far. So anyway, one last check the swamp trap, and see what we got. I checked the front. I didn't see anything there. I did find a big giant delicious turtle, but unfortunately we're not allowed to trap those guys or catch them. Wow, that's some amazing camouflage. Right there. I would step on that turtle without noticing he was there, for sure. He just went over there, just went under the mud, and that was it. Gone. Beaver didn't repair nothing. Still flowing, so I'm expecting that this trap over here has got nothing on it once again. And I am correct. I got one more trap to check here. I figure eventually something's going to happen, because eventually beaver's going to screw up. I thought about changing the traps around, trying different locations, and it just couldn't really find a spot that would really work. There we go. So it looks like we actually got a beaver here. .35 or 40 pounder. I think it'll be edible. That water is cold enough, and so that means he's been keeping cold if he's been here for a little bit. I don't know, like Kevin took the stuff out, or Kevin checked a couple of days ago, so I think he'll be fine to eat. So we'll turn him into dinner. Got some work left to do here. The water temperature doesn't feel too bad. It's whether it's been sitting in the sun for a couple of days. The body temperature doesn't feel too bad. The back legs were in the cold water, so I think they'd be fine. It'd be fine to eat. It's gonna be some work hoofing this guy out. Might have to go get the sled first. I'll do a half a trip now and grab the sled and kind of meet up with myself. Dragging the beaver won't hurt it at all as long as I go with the fur and I don't drag it over any stumps or weird things. Be some work to get them out though. All right. got the Jackery here. Again, we've been using this sucker all week. Wrong button. 74% battery power left. The lights are going to come on in a second. There we go. Press the wrong button. You got to press the display button. So anyway, been happy with that. But yeah, if you haven't seen any other videos in the series, you should be checking back. I'll make a playlist. But we got the fish in the pond during this week. We got some beaver burgers. We made beaver burgers earlier. We had some bear as well. Man, what else? We ate planked rainbow trout. But it's been fun hanging out here. I just got the fire lit over here. We can go down and check out the fish while we're waiting for that fire to burn down. I have a special idea I want to do with this beaver. It's going to be a primitive cook. I haven't done primitive cooks in a while. We do have some nice dried firewood on site, which has been nice to have. I'd like to do a whole beaver again at some point. It's just it's too much for me to eat today, so I'm going to do something with the leg. So stay tuned for that. I'm not sure if it's going to work, but I have a pretty good hunch that it will. But we have to let this burn down to coal, and in the meantime I'm going to process that beaver for fur and for food. So we got our nice big delicious juicy chunk of meat. It's a good pound or two, maybe a pound. I say if you put two of them together, you get a pound. Got quite a bit of work to do on the beaver still, but I do want to get this on the fire because it just started to do a little bit of a light rain, and for this to work, I don't really want to have, I don't want to be behind the 8 ball. So we got burnt down to coals here. So my idea is, I've seen people cook steaks like this. I've cooked steak like this before. But we got a nice bed of coals, so we're going to move all the coals out of the way, and then I'm going to clear out a spot here in the fire. I want to go down not too deep. I don't want to do like a pit roast, but I want it below the surface, and then I want a pile of coals on top of it. It is a thick piece of meat, and when people put steak on it, it's only about that big. Plus you get to monitor it. So how I'm going to do it, I'm not going to monitor it. I'm going to try to bake it and keep those juices on the inside. So we're going to put it on the top of the coals for starters. Get a sear. Then we're going to dig it away. And then we're going to bury it and put the coals over top, and then keep our fire going for, I would say, about an hour. That should be plenty of time to bake it. Then we can pull it out and give it a test. Beaver is one of those things you can't eat. I say you can eat it raw, but you don't have to cook it. It's not like a bear. It's more like a venison. So you can have it a little bit pink on the inside. And if it's not totally done, we can always pull it back off and cook it some more. So we've eaten beaver like this before on a spit and just chunk pieces off every once in a while. We've done deer like this, a giant spit roast, and it works out really good. So I'm hopeful that this will work with the beaver as well. There we go, guys. There we got our delicious beaver all smashed in there with adobo. I don't know if the adobo is going to impart any flavor here because it's going to be, you know, cooked or baked or broiled or even barbecued with direct heat, but it can't hurt to add all that extra flavor in there. So let's throw it on the fire. We clear out some of the coals here and make a nice bed for it. And we're just going to lay it right on top. So we're going to get a nice light sear on that to kind of seal in the juices. When those coals start easily knocking off, we know that the outside of it is starting to cook anyway. So we'll just keep rotating it, keep those coals alive by giving them a little bit of oxygen, and rake the fresh ones over. And then it's just a matter of getting that the juices locked in, and then we'll bury it, bake it, and that should be for a nice tender beaver roast. Yummy. Well, that rain is starting to pick up a little bit. Thankfully, we can actually keep the door open and listen to one of my favorite sounds, which is rain on a tin roof. We get out of the elements in here. We can also sit on the front stoop too, because we got a nice overhang here, and then we have our overhang, which we've been using also for the maple syrup over here. And incidentally, it makes a great place to work on the beaver. So I've got quite a bit left that I'm hesitating on doing, but I'm not hesitating completely. I'm trying to make sure that that steak doesn't get burnt on the outside before we bury it. So it's looking pretty good. We'll just give it a couple more rotations because we do want that sear. And those coals just knock right off. You'd think it would be kind of funny and gross to put it on the coals like that. But aside from just making sure that you use like the right kind of wood, you wouldn't want to use something that you're allergic to potentially, or something that would give it an off flavor or smoke. And you're off to the races. I added a little bit more fire over here so that we can continuously have some warm coals to work with. We'll keep breaking those on top. And that'll do nice. So we're just waiting until we get a nice hard layer on the outside of that, and then we'll bury it. There's our pelt. Did a pretty decent job, and it's actually in a good condition. It's iffy if it's a spring beaver, if you're gonna get like a good hide or a not so good hide, but this one is as good as I've ever seen one. And look how big it is. Like, this is a blanket. You get 2 of these, you got yourself something to sleep on, that's for sure. I've preserved everything that you need. You got the snout there, the nose, the eyes came out really good. Sometimes those, if you're not a perfect skinner, like I'm not perfect yet, got the ears there too, if you can see them. So that's all something that people are going to look for. Can't show you the other side. Well, maybe I can show you a little bit of the other side. It's got to be still scraped to remove all of the meat, and then it has to be stretched out and dried. So we're only, I would say, less than halfway there. So there's a ton of work left to scrape it, maybe another hour or so. And if you're wondering, I'm just holding on to the leg holes. These are the leg holes. So there's obviously 4 leg holes, and then once it stretches out, it'll be perfectly round. I don't have the stretchers and all that good stuff. What I'm going to do is I'm going to roll it up, and I'll throw it in the freezer, and that'll be for a job for later, for another time. And then I've got the carcass set aside, so that's going to be frozen until probably July. That's our warmest month. That's when we'll get the best bang for the buck as far as maggots go and fly activity. If I threw it out now, nothing would happen. They're just not active yet. And the mosquitoes aren't even out yet. So yeah, there you go. There's a beaver start to finish. And we got about maybe 20 minutes left for the steak cooking. I got the fire loaded up. So I don't want to overdo it, but it's hard to know exactly when it will be done. But soon. Well, I'm not sure how you guys are gonna rate that, but I would say it's probably an 8. I might want to cook it a little bit longer. I was a little iffy when I was starting to play around with it to see if it was actually something that I would want to eat, because there's a lot of black on the outside. But as soon as you get that layer off, you're left with a delicious looking piece of meat here. You can get that in focus. So that's I'd say that's a medium rare. Maybe, yeah, I'd say it's a medium rare because it came off warm. That's good. It's a little bleedy, so maybe it's on the rare side. But this is kind of exactly how cavemen would have cooked stuff. Stuff would have just accidentally rolled in the fire, or they would be using the fire to keep bugs off, and they would have found that it was just a lot easier to chew, even just cooked a little bit like that. So if you're rushed to eat, you cook a little bit, you scrape a little bit, you eat a little bit. I don't know if that would be my preferred way to cook something, but in a pinch you could definitely cook it this way. You can see this side's actually more well done, and then you're just cutting off that thin layer that you wouldn't want to eat, because obviously it's going to be very charcoaly. But if you like charcoal, I mean, that's lots of it to go around. It's very barbecue flavor like. And then we're just going to add a little bit more adobo on there to get that flavor back. This side is much more well done. So I'd say that's I don't know, what would you guys say? Medium well? Yeah, much easier to chew, so I prefer this side. The other side is just a little bit too rare for me. That's a good color there compared to that. So it's a matter of preference, right? And that was about 45 minutes. If I told you that wasn't roast beef, kind of rabbity, but overall it's really good. It's one of my preferred meats. Now we've got some food for our fish now. We've got some maggot food. And I've got some other projects we got to get going with the fish as well. So that's next. Maybe we'll get into a turkey. Hard to say. It's always a crapshoot. But there's definitely a lot more to come in this series. So I'm going to keep picking away at this, and I'll see you guys on the next installment. Maybe it's at the cabin. Things work out. Maybe somewhere else.